Well, it's time now to bring in our backbench panel. Joining me from Sydney is the Liberal member for Hughes, Jenny Ware, and the Labor Senator, Tony Sheldon. Thank you both for your time. I might put this question to both of you, but I'll ask Jenny Ware first. AUKUS, such a massive commitment on every front, strategic, financial. What does the AUKUS agreement mean to you?
The coalition, Andrew, welcomes the announcement by the government. Some of the details have started to be released. This, of course, comes on the back of the coalition when we were in government, announced in September 2021 that we were entering into the trilateral agreement with our very good friends, the UK and also the United States. It's welcomed by the coalition because it shows the government will continue the coalition's original thrust towards national security, ensuring Australians' values and our territory, and also ensuring our safety and security within the geopolitical environment in which we currently live.
Tony Sheldon?
Well, I think it's incredibly important that we have a bipartisan approach to national defence. It's a critical point of time around the world, and it's extremely important that we have not only a national security arrangement like AUKUS, which is going to serve us well. It gives that national deterrence. It gives us ultimately sovereign capability as well, but also economic capability that we build through this program. And that access to those new technologies means that there's also a jobs benefit in this these announcements coming in the next few hours, and the announcements leading up to this program. So look, I think this is particularly important. And also, if you look at it in the context of the announcement last week with regards training exercises with the Indian Army, the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of India making that announcement, and that's some significant steps we're making in defence, and it's one that is going to do us well in the future.
All right, that's bipartisan. Let's go a bit partisan now. I want to talk about the situation in the Senate at the moment. Tony Sheldon, you've got roadblocks in a number of areas. The safeguards mechanism, even the voice referendum machinery bill. How do you think all this is going to end up?
Look, I think what's clear, and that is that there's conversations that will continue to need to take place. That's the nature of the Senate and for any party that's in government. And it's no different now. We've got some very important policy announcements, and the National Reconstruction Fund, of course, is about building capacity up in the economy. They certainly, on the front of energy, we need to be making those steps to make us a cleaner, but also a economy that can take all the advantages from going to a cleaner energy economy, whilst making sure we've got those transition steps right in place to make sure that we don't stumble. And I'm confident we've got that right. And of course, this program that we're talking about just a few minutes ago is part of that approach to make sure that we've got both national defence, the opportunities that come out of national defence for increasing skills, new technology, which has a private industry and jobs spin-off, which is incredibly important. And of course, I think that at the end of the day with the Senate, we'll keep working through those arrangements. We'll keep working through concerns that people are raising, and we'll get a solution. But I am particularly frustrated with the fact that the opposition, Liberals and National Party, have made it clear that they aren't in favour of having national capability in our manufacturing industry. We've seen ministers say we don't build trains here. We've seen ministers from previous governments, coalition governments, run down the manufacturing industry. We saw what happened with the car industry, and it wasn't just about the investment in the car industry that we had, but also that national capability you build by having other spin-off industries are able to be maintained, skilled, trained. And of course, those sorts of initiatives have to be done in a very holistic way to make sure that the economy is not only making things, but it's making things with Australians, it's building skills up and spinning off into other parts of the economy and building a thicker layer right across the economy.
Well, Jenny Ware, Labor accuses the opposition of being the no-alition instead of the coalition. They're saying Peter Dutton is taking a Tony Abbott-style approach to legislation. What do you make of that?
Oh, I don't agree with that at all, Andrew. We've heard the Shadow Minister, Andrew Hastie, talk about his approach on AUKUS, and that is a nation-building project, and from that perspective it certainly has the support of the coalition. But in the true Westminster style of government, we intend to hold this government to account on things such as timing, budget, and how the whole AUKUS project is in fact going to roll out. And while you're mentioning it, the reason that some bills are still stuck in the Senate is because we have a Senate's estimates work in this country, and the role of the Senate is to give legislation very close scrutiny. The government has simply not done its work in some areas, and the referendum machinery bill is one of those. This would be, if this bill is enacted, it would be the first time out of the 44 referendums that we have held in this country, and only 8 of those have ever got through, it would be the very first time that the government has not funded both the yes and the no case. It would also be the very first time that a pamphlet has not been distributed to every Australian household outlining both the yes case and the no case. It is the government, and Anthony Albanese went to the election saying that he was going to hold a referendum on the voice. If he wants to hold the referendum on the voice, and he wants to ensure that the Australian people understand what it is that he is asking them to vote on, he needs to properly educate Australians so that they can provide an informed decision. So the reason that bills are stalling in the Senate is simply because the government has not done its work on some of these key issues.
All right, I'm sure Tony Sheldon would like to respond to that, but I'm going to ask you briefly about something else, and that's the New South Wales election. Is Labor fairly confident in terms of this election? And Daniel Mookhey, the Shadow Treasurer, he worked with you at the TWU. He's an old TWU guy. What sort of Treasurer do you think he'd be? And would he be the sort to let public sector wages get out of control?
Well, I think what's quite clear, and that is that we even saw a decision today, and I'll come back to Daniel Mookhey in 2 moments, but we saw a decision today from the State Industrial Relations Commission, which has already said that the payments and wages to rail workers needs to be higher than the cap that the state government set. And that's an important recognition of how we actually keep and maintain people within the public service to provide those services we need. We're seeing people leaving the health industry. We're seeing teachers which are highly casualised work that are expected to give back to our community, and rightly so. But they're being treated in a way that means that our kids aren't getting sort of skilled, experienced teachers staying within the system. So we have to make sure that we're attracting the best, maintaining the best, and making sure that we're building up those services that provides for everybody in our community.
Daniel Mookhey?
Daniel Mookhey. Daniel's Daniel is a product of Western Sydney. He grew up, born in Blacktown Hospital, and grew up out in Marylands. And Daniel, when I worked with him, had a very his first start in his career. He was coordinating some of the most difficult situations I've been in myself, and that's he managed a very good job on dealing with the Ansett collapse. Unfortunately, that horrific situation, but also he has one of those lucky experiences that. He also worked for the largest small business organisation in the country, which happens to be the Transport Workers Union, which maybe not many of you watchers are aware of. But Andrew, you know that the owner-drivers is an important area where you involve both skills, community, desire to work hard, reward for that work, but also getting minimum standards in some pretty tough industry where a lot of people in supply chains putting a lot of pressure on workers and a pressure on the companies that those workers directly work for. For someone to understand the politics of and the economic questions that put pressure on business, large and small, then he's your man, because he's got that capacity from very early in his career, both coordinating people that come from very mixed backgrounds, very straightforward and straight shooters.
Well, there you go.
And was always able to manage them.
I wouldn't expect anything but a ringing endorsement. Jenny Ware and Tony Sheldon, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.